do a very nice wrap up of where we've come from to this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's get into it. Let's get straight into it.
Sure. So the first deduction that I want to look at is a donation.
Yeah.
So say you've got some spare money, say from your bonus money, and you want to make a charitable donation
to whatever organization
to
or
whatever.
NGO. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So the donation that you make is actually tax deductible, but there are of course provisos. It needs to be a donation to a registered public benefit organization.
Okay.
So there's a whole list of requirements.
So you can't just say I gave True 5,000 rand. How? That was a donation.
So to get the tax deduction, it needs to be a registered public benefits organization. There's a whole section in the Income Tax Act that deals with that, Section 18A, in terms of which organization actually qualifies to even register as a public benefit organization, even before you come with your donation. And the organization itself has got certain registrations that it needs to have in place before it can publicize or advertise itself as a public benefit organization. And then once they receive your donation, they would then issue with a Section 18A certificate, which you would then use to claim your donation on your tax return.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how do you claim? Oh, when you claim, you've got a section there that you.
Yes.
Okay.
So when you open up your tax return, it will ask you a series of questions which you would answer yes or no, depending on your situation. So one of the questions there would be, did you make a donation to a registered public benefit organization? So on that question, you would answer yes, and then the donation section of the return would then open up.
I see.
You to be able to populate the amount that you donated.
Pretty user friendly, if you ask me.
Very user friendly.
It's better than trying to do it yourself.
It's possible to do it yourself. E-filing is the best source.
Well, I mean, the system behind the e-filing.
Yes.
I mean, if you had to do all of that yourself,
it is possible.
Well, it is. But I think it's why people decided not to pay taxes.
Yeah, true.
They're like, nah, fam, this is
true. Very true.
And what else are we touching on today?
Before we move too far away from the donations, there is a limit to the donation.
Oh.
So if you've got 100K, don't think you're gonna get 100K deduction. So there is a limit.
There's a threshold.
There's a threshold. It's limited to 10% of your taxable income. Taxable income, I'll touch on what exactly it is towards the end, but basically taxable income is the amount that you get after you've done all of your calculation. Remember, we started with income, less exemptions, less deductions gives you taxable income. So your donation is one of the last deductions that you would claim, or the calculation behind the return. It's the last calculation to be made because it needs to get to your taxable income, work out what that amount is, work out 10% of that amount, and if you've got any donations, the donation is then limited to that 10%.
I see.
Yes.
I see. Okay, but why is that? Is that to deter people from using donations as a way of getting around taxes?
I think it's that, and also, I mean, SARS needs the money because SARS will hand over the money to Treasury, who will then distribute it to the various departments.
Yeah.
So the country needs the money.
Sure.
If we all now overclaiming and being in refund positions, then at the end of the day, it doesn't serve any purpose. It doesn't serve any good for anybody.
And that's directly related to service delivery.
That's
I
correct.
See, I see.
So the more money SARS collects, the more the country can better function also.
In an ideal
world, yes.
But we won't go there.
We won't go there.
What else? Where are we?
And then the other deduction
Yes.
is medical expenses. Medical expenses can get quite complex, but I just want to touch on three things very briefly with regards to medical. So the first one is if you have a medical aid and you contribute towards a medical aid every month, then your contributions are tax deductible.
Okay.
So if you belong to XYZ medical aid, your medical aid provider will give you a tax certificate at the end of the tax year, and then that is what you use then to populate the numbers on your tax return, in terms of the contributions that you've made and any claims you made towards the medical aid. That's one aspect. The other aspect, which kind of overlaps with the medical aid, is when you have paid for medical expenses cash out of your own pocket. So either you don't have medical aid at all, or your funds have run out in your medical aid and you're in a position where you need to pay cash.
For everything going forward, yeah.
Yes. So any expenses, I say any very loosely, I'll explain why shortly, but any expenses that you've paid out of your own pocket that are in relation to your medical expenses, then there's a section on the tax return that you can fill out that this is what I paid to Dr. ABC when I went for a consultation, and they wrote me up a script and I had to pay cash for this medication at this pharmacy. But it's very important that you keep your receipts, because the only way to prove any amount that you've got on your tax return, most especially a deduction that you're claiming, is if you've got that documentary evidence. That is your receipt that you went to the doctor. That is your receipt that you bought medication at a pharmacy. That being said, there are limitations in terms of what you can actually present. So you can go buy Panado over the counter, but SARS says that they need to limit. There obviously needs to be some kind of limit. It can't just be anything. I mean, there's a whole host of medication that you can get.
So it will be more prescribed stuff. Or
it has
schedule,
to be,
whatever medication.
It has to be prescribed by a medical practitioner. And if you notice on your receipt, where you purchase prescribed medication versus over-the-counter medication, there is, I think the code is RX for prescribed. So when SARS asks you to supply your supporting documents, they'd be looking for that RX to indicate
that ticks off
that it's prescribed medication. And you'd get your deduction then only for that, and not necessarily for the over-the-counter medication that you can just walk in and buy.
And your roll-on and your toothpaste and all this.
Does that form part of medication?
Well, when you buy it at Discam or wherever, you know what I mean? It appears on the same slip.
Yes.
You're not claiming for the roll-on, guys. And your hair products. There's that sweet aisle there. There's supplements for gym.
Yes.
No.
It needs to be prescribed by a medical professional.
And your personal trainer is not a medical professional.
No. Not at all, no.
But my trainer said I must get creatine. That's not RX, guys.
No. And then the third aspect with regards to medical expenditure can get quite complex. Is with regards to persons living with physical impairments and disabilities. So there's all these limitations for the ordinary person who is fully able-bodied. But when it comes to a person living with a physical impairment and a disability, obviously you having that disability, it increases your medical expenses exponentially, like your whole life.
Your existence is a medical expense.
Yes, your whole existence. So there's a certain category or a certain section that deals specifically with persons living with physical impairments and disabilities, and the thresholds are a lot higher. The limitations are also a lot wider. However, your physical impairment or your disability needs to then be authorized by a medical professional again. So there's a whole form that you would need to fill out. So it's sectioned. I think you fill out the first section and then you hand it over to your doctor, who would then fill out the remainder of the document to sort of indicate that, yes, you are an individual who's living with this condition and you need excessive medical care, much more than a fully able-bodied person, and then any excess medical expenses that's in relation to your disability also. So it's not just any. So
it's not that if you have a disability and you get the flu,
Yes.
That covers.
So
it's about what your ailment is.
There needs to be that link. Yes.
Right.
I actually had a client who asked about autism, and I did a little bit of research, and so autism would actually also fit into a disability or a physical impairment, but it needs then that doctor's stamp, that doctor's signature.
Because there's functional autism, then there's the recluse, etc.
Yes.
Right.
Because my client was actually mentioning that she spends a lot of money taking her child to a special school. So school fees would also form part of the expenditure that we can claim as a result of the disability. So SARS would also consider any distance that you would travel, because they're not very prevalent, these schools.
So the proximity, and they're not close to, they're usually not around the corner from the house.
That's exactly so.
Yeah.
So they would consider what is the additional distance that you need to travel in order to drop your child off at the special school versus another school that's in your neighborhood. And you'd get those kilometers back. It's a whole calculation.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Well, this is interesting stuff. Eye-opening. And just to show you how intricate the world of tax really can be.
It is as deep and as vast as the ocean.
And I can imagine that. And the more we speak, the more I understand that we haven't even scratched the surface yet.
Not at all.
But we're going there.
Yes.
We'll pick this up next year. In the meantime, the Tax Cafe remains open. You guys might close, but the Tax Cafe remains open.
We soldier on.
Tell us, how do they get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with me telephonically on 061-874-2546, via email on info@thetaxcafe.co.za. You can check out my website as well, www.thetaxcafe.co.za, and all over social media. And I've got some fun news coming up in January.
Yay!
Which I will deliver in January. But
awesome! We love fun news. We love fun news. Her name is Faniswa Mavuso, and she is from the Tax Cafe. Merry Christmas.
And a Happy New Year.
And a Happy New Year. We'll see you next year.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.